Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am 7Draws6, and I am the GM for 7th Roll. And today we are going to be continuing our series on the Elemental Master on my Homebrew class that I created, and that we are currently updating and going through a little bit to see if we can improve it in certain ways. So we have gone through the main class. We have gone through the first subclass, which is the Path of the Warrior that you still partially see on the left side here. But now we are going to go into the Path of the Caster, which is the second of 4 subclasses that we're currently going to be covering. But of course, excuse me, before we do that, we are going to update this to 0.5.4 because this is the 4th video, because I'm original like that. So let's have a look. So Path of the Caster is pretty much meant to be the spellcasting class. This means that this is pretty much going to be very similar to Eldritch Knight's Arcane Trickster. Of course, the difference is that the Elemental Master technically already has spellcasting in Elemental Blasts. However, here we're actually looking at specifically spells that exist in Dungeons and Dragons. Now, 2 things that I do want to mention. 1, I have not written any new spells for this class yet. So I don't even know if I'm gonna do that. I might. Still considering that, but probably it's not a priority. Let's put it like that. 2, I haven't looked at Tasha's yet. Actually, I have Tasha's here, so I might actually have a look at Tasha's during this video, just to see if there's any spells. Because I don't know if there's maybe a spell that I want to put in there. I'm not sure. But anyway. This class, or this subclass, is the only reason that there is indeed a that there is actually a spell list for this class. That is the entire reason. Is just the fact that this, subclass needs one. I didn't want to be like, hey, you can pick illusion spells from the wizard spell list or whatever. I didn't want to do that, so I just said like what spells fit this class, made a list, and that's your spell list. Also only goes up to level 4 because you can only cast up to 4th levels. So pretty much this is a 1/3 caster. Actually, I might need to add that in multi-classing. I'll have a look at that. Anyway, let's get to subclass. So Path of the Caster, first of all, at level 3 you get spellcasting because we're original. When you reach 3rd level, you augment your elemental prowess with the ability to cast spells. So, see chapter 10 of the PHB. For the general rules of spellcasting, because this doesn't have a chapter 10. The Elemental Master spell list is detailed at the end of the class description. So you learn 2 cantrips from the spell list. You learn an additional Elemental Master cantrip at 10th level. This is, I think, literally taken from Eldritch Knight, I think. I think this entire thing is literally taken from Eldritch Knight. So pretty much spell slots, there is a table right over here that shows you how many spell slots you have, how many spells you know, how many cantrips you know, and at what level, right? Honestly, it's that simple. So there's that. And then when you gain a level in this class, you can replace one of the Elemental Master spells with another spell of your choice from the Elemental Master spell list. Same as the other subclasses, I think, as far as I know. And then spellcasting ability. Wisdom is your spellcasting ability. And I did want to add the spell save DC and the spell attack modifier here again, just so you're 100% sure this is what you're using for these spells as well. It's the same as the one for the Elemental Blast, so if you want to put it on your sheet, it's just the same spell save DC, unless you have some funky magic item that only gives it to you on spells and doesn't give it to you on Elemental Blast. I don't know. If there's a funky thing like that, then you're fucked. But other than that, same spell save, usually. So with that, let's get into a little bit more of the special thing, affinity slots. So, what are affinity slots? You have learned how to tap into your elemental power to gain access to more magic and have learned to sacrifice your newfound spell power to tap into more elemental strength. You can create spell slots from affinity points and vice versa. Here's the thing. This is a feature that anyone who's read the PHB will probably recognize from Sorcerer. It is, and I will admit this, literally stolen from Sorcerer. You can spend 2 affinity points for a first level, 4 for a second, 5 for a third, and 7 for a fourth. I'm gonna be honest. I am not a fan of this because when I originally made this, I didn't think about the fact that my affinity points reset on a short rest, whereas sorcery points reset on a long rest. This is allows you to play a worse version of the coffee lock, which I am not a fan of. So, I am going to change this. Because honestly, I'm not a fan. Now, I do actually, for this one, I do have something, but I actually quickly have to check. Yeah, it's actually fine. All right, so here's the thing. So, affinity slots, we are going to remove affinity slots. And we're going to remove this table. Should be all of this. Yes. Spellcasting. So then we'll put a page break here. I'm quickly making sure that it's at least kind of decent. So what we're going to be doing is, I'm still thinking what I'm going to call this. Affinity spells. Let's call it that. I just realized I put the page break on the wrong side of the, or I started typing on the wrong side. It's possible that I'm going to have to like replace or like put some stuff on different places. Not 100% sure about that yet, but we'll see that in a second. So what we're going to do, when you reach 3rd level in this class, you can change your spells to suit your needs. Whenever you cast a spell that deals fire, I'm thinking, yeah, it's going to be fire, acid, hold on, fire, acid, poison, or cold damage, which is, again, I've done this once before. Actually, I think I did it for the protecting armor over here. So the explanation is the same thing. These are the special types that correspond to the 8 elements that you can use, or to the 8 elemental planes that you get your powers from. So whenever you cast a spell that deals fire, acid, poison, or cold damage, you can replace that damage type to fire, acid, poison, cold, bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage by spending, I don't think that comma needs to be there, by spending 2 affinity points. If you have the corresponding elemental affinity from the elemental control feature, you only have to spend 1 affinity point. I like this more because it allows you to still have that usage that the Elemental Blast has, where you're able to change the type of your spells, right? Why did I add Bludgeoning, Piercing, and Slashing damage to this version and not to the first 4? Reason for that is, again, let's say, I think there's a cantrip called Sword Burst, which allows you to like have this like array of swords. It's a cantrip, right? It's an example that I'm giving. I'm not saying that it's in the spell list, but let's take that one for a moment, right? Let's say that you have Sword Burst, right? That one deals slashing damage, but it's not a water attack. So it doesn't make sense to have it be able to change its type because it's a metal sword, which technically metal, you can kind of say it's earth, but it's not pure water that you're changing it to something else. Why can you change it to these types? Because you can change a fireball into a water ball, pretty much. That's literally the thing. That's literally the entire explanation. And then the 2 affinity points goes down to 1 affinity points if you have the corresponding affinity. Actually, I should, if you have if the type you, if the damage type you switch to corresponds to an elemental affinity from the elemental control feature you possess, you only have to spend 1 affinity point. I think that's going to explain it better, because it's these that you have to look at. If you change it to bludgeoning and you have earth affinity, then it's fine. That's the way it works. But for example, if you're changing a fire spell into an earth spell and you have fire affinity, that doesn't work. You have to change it to something that you have affinity with. Also, I think for balancing perspective, these 3 don't matter, because I think there's a lot more creatures that are resistant to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing just in general. So I don't think this is gonna be the thing that breaks it. I don't think, honestly. And it spends 2 affinity points. So I actually like this a little bit more than the affinity slots. You can replace, and I think one more thing, you can replace you replace one of those damage types fire acid, because there are spells like Ice Storm, I think, deals bludgeoning and cold damage, so you can only change the cold damage to something else. That's really the point. All right, so that's affinity spells. That's the first feature. Then Residual Energy. When you reach level 5, you start understanding how to weave your own elemental powers with the magic that you have learned from the world. Whenever you cast a spell of level 1 or above, you can cast Elemental Blast as a bonus action. This is the replacement for extra attack. You can use a spell to cast, and then you can use a bonus action to have a second attack. So I think that's a fine feature. It is a cantrip that you're casting in addition to it, and you get a little bit of utility out of it. So this is the table that I mentioned. Strengthened Affinity. Starting from level 7, whenever you cast Elemental Blast, you become able to combine the blast with small bits of energy from other elements. You can spend any number of affinity points and add additional effects from the elemental control feature to your elemental blasts. You can spend 1 affinity point if you have the elemental affinity, 2 if you do not. So what does that mean? Let's say that you're casting a let's say that you're casting a cantrip. Let's say that you're casting Elemental Blast as a fire cantrip. But you want to add temporary hit points to that. With this, you can. So what you do is, let's say that you have fire and water as your original 2 affinities. You cast Elemental Blast as a fire cantrip. And then you spend 1 affinity point because you have the water affinity to also give a target within 10 feet of the target your wisdom temporary hit points. What you can also do is you can cast a fire and then spend 2 affinity points to give a target within 10 feet plus 1 AC until the end of your next turn. That's really the point. That's really the way it works. This does not, maybe one thing that I should add. You cannot use your elemental burst feature if you do this, however. So you can't like start bursting stuff and get crazy. So that's the way this works. Then, combined strength. When you reach level 11, you are able to choose an additional combined elemental affinity from the elemental control feature. Also for both choices, you do not have to have the requirements for combined elemental affinities. Pretty much this caster, because they have the inherent knowledge of casting spells, they have the advantage of being able to change the elemental blast similarly to how sorcerer can. Because of that, they can, in other words, get additional combined elemental affinities. For those of you who don't get this, by the way, this means that, for example, with this subclass, you can get smoke and ice if you want to, for example, at the same time. And let's say that you have smoke and ice, and you don't have wind as your basic elemental affinity, completely fine, because you don't need to have it. Then, true elemental casting, which I am going to call Meteor Element. I want to recall it. So when you reach level 17, you have learned one of the strongest spells from the material plane. You can now cast Meteor Swarm at the cost of 9 affinity points. When you cast a spell, cannot cast it again until you finish a long rest. Pretty much you're spending half your affinity points to cast Meteor Swarm once. Honestly, this is not the only time that this is going to happen. There are some other subclasses that have something similar to this. Why is this here? It's here because you're a caster and you're at level 17. At level 17, people get 9th level spells. I thought it would be interesting if you were able to just cast Meteor Swarm. It's still not as powerful as a sorcerer. A sorcerer can learn 2 9th level spells, can pick their 9th level spell, can, you know, do some crazy shit, can use their 9th level slot to upcast a 7th or an 8th level spell. You can literally only cast Meteor Swarm once, right? So it's less powerful than for a sorcerer or a wizard because you have less options, but it gives you this one powerful tool at this level, and I kind of really like that. So I'm going to do 2 things. I am going to go up here quickly, and I don't need to change combat path feature. Actually, I just realized I don't have to change anything because it just says combat path feature. I just realized that. The last thing, we'll have a look at the spell list. I'm just gonna go quickly through these. The point here is that all of these spells, to an extent, use something elemental, right? You have Acid Splash, Chill Touch, Control Flames, Create Bond. Right? This is like, there's a couple of fire, there's a couple of ice. Minor illusions, for people wondering why there's illusion spells in here, that's water. I've always seen water as something that's like able to, you know, put a haze and conjure up illusions. That's why there is why there are illusion spells in here. Also, I didn't want everything to be damage. I think, yeah, Mirror Image is here, for example, which is kind of the same. Like, you just imagine it like you're making these watery illusions around you. Wall of sand, wall of water, water breathing, water walk, wind wall, you know, everything. Major Image, again, illusion. So this is really just a set of spells that I felt fit the elemental thing. Conjure minor elementals is a spell, and you only go up to 4th level because you'll never be able to cast anything above 4th level with this class. So now, before I close this video, I'm actually gonna look through Tasha's to see, are there any spells that I missed? Or is there like a list of new spells that were added in spells? Here, 105. Because I actually don't know. Booming Blade is not in there, but that's by design. Green Flame Blade is in there. Lightning Lure is not, but that's lightning. For people wondering why lightning's not in here, if you look at the lore, that is a quasi-elemental plane, I think, between fire and the positive elemental plane, which we're going to talk about next video. And I didn't want to have to deal with the quasi-elemental planes. I am thinking of making lightning a subclass. Just so you know. I'm thinking about it. I'm still balancing it in my head. Swordburst, Tasha's Caustic Brew. I don't think so. Summon Beast. Intellect Fortress. Spirit Shroud. Summon Elemental. I think I will put Summon Elemental in there. Because, you know, that would work. And then Intellect Fortress? I kind of want to see what Intellect Fortress is. I don't know. Are these spells in here? I hope so. Yeah, they are. Okay. Intellect Fortress. Where is your Intellect Fortress? Your one willing creature has resistance to psychic damage. Yeah, never mind. And Spirit Shroud. I don't think that's going to fit either. Spirit Shroud. Call the Spirits of the Dead. Yeah, no. So the only spell from Tasha's is going to be Summon Elemental. I think. If you guys have other opinions on it, please, by all means, leave them down below. This should be Summon Elemental. Here you go. Yeah. So that was the discussion on the Path of the Caster. Hope you did enjoy. If you did, you can leave a like on the video. You can subscribe to the channel to if you want to see the remaining videos on this. Again, this version of the Elemental Master, the current version 0.5.4, is going to be in the description down below. But in addition to that, the current version of the Elemental Master, where all of the changes are going to be present, is also going to be down below. So if you want to have a look at that, by all means, go ahead. Any feedback is appreciated. And yeah, with that, ladies and gentlemen, this has been 7 Draws to 6. Until next time.